Hey there viewers, welcome back to another episode of Ray of All Trades. Today we are back on the KTM 65. It's got a locked up clutch, I'm guessing from sitting. I've tried the normal items like driving it around, like starting it in gear, driving it around, trying to release it that way, trying to kickstart it while I'm up against an immovable object, things like that. It just won't free up. So I'm going to try to take this clutch apart. I've already ordered the gasket and the clutch and the replacement oil, and I haven't taken this one apart yet, so let's take it apart together, see what we can find out, see if we can get it freed up and get it back in service. Alright, first things first, let's get the oil out of it. $14mm drain plug. Looks like it's got a little bit of trash on the end of it. There's a magnet built into these things to capture any kind of metal particles. And that one had some. I anticipate, because it is the gear case and everything, usually they do have some metal particles on them. It's not a huge abundance of them. I think if I pull this cover off, if I can pull this cover off without taking this water pump out, I don't know if the coolant will stay in there or not. Let's go ahead and get the clutch. So this would be the slave cylinder, I guess. Let's get that off there. 3 8mm bolts. And the slave cylinder comes off just like that. When you squeeze the clutch, I imagine that is pushing on this piston right here. I can see it moving, so that would be pushing on this right here, which is pushing against the center of the clutch in there. It doesn't feel like that comes out. So let's just push this out the way for a second. We're going to try to pull out all of these 8mm bolts all the way around the cover and see if the whole cover comes off. I'm going to place these in order in the direction I take them off to see if one of them is longer than the rest. Yep, they are different lengths, so keep track of which one goes where. Nope, looks like I gotta take that off too. Curious if it'll come off. Oh yeah, this little 1/4" impact driver. So you pulled that right off. You're going to orient it back to 12 o'clock position when you're done. Let's tuck this up out of the way. So, is there a keeper on here? Let's find out. I don't see one. Just using this mighty hammer of mine. You can tell it's just a really small hammer. And tapping on a ledge back here so that I wasn't against where the gasket is. Just small little bitty taps. Pull it out of there. I want to be very cautious that nothing spring-loaded comes flying out at me. So I found my first obstacle. A spring on this brake right here. Let's get that off. Okay, so back behind this arm right here is a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. And note to self, it was already a little bit loose. So when I go to put it back on, I want to make sure that I know why it was loose. I'm sorry, it wasn't a bolt, it was a nut. So it needs a little bit of cleaning before we put it back together too. So I'm just going to put this temporarily back on, so the washer and the nut back on. And it's that the plunger came out of the master cylinder, but it looks like it gives me enough room to pull this cover off. Okay. Yep, sure does. And like I mentioned, there's spring-loaded pieces in here. So the water pump right here, I think I have the rebuild kit for that. The clutch right here is what we're going to be taking apart. It looks like Allen bolts. It's crazy because I don't know why that's not slipping. It looks like it's not stuck, but anyway, so we're in there, we're going to change it and hopefully find out why that clutch was stuck. That's what the slave cylinder pushes against to release the clutch on the pressure plate. We're going to be changing these plates out of here. That doesn't look right. That bolt is loose. That doesn't look right at all. Okay. Not crazy about that. And the head's all boogered up on it. Does that mean that this is all free now? Yep, sure does. There's one of those gears I was talking about that I was scared was going to fall. I'm thinking that that probably went right there. I think I would be right. I think it goes right there. Clutch pack comes out just like that. I'm going to pull out all of these screws. I need to find the torque settings for them, and like I said, it's very possible that one of these friction discs or plates are different sizes than the rest, so we want to be very cautious. Okay, I'm going to do my best to figure out what these bolts are torqued to, just in case I can't figure it out. But the only torque wrench I have that'll tell me like when it breaks is one of these bar style, and of course it's on a 1/2 inch, and I don't have a 3/8 handy, so nope, I'm gonna have to put this in a vise to be able to check. Bear with me. So this is almost laughable, and I'm probably not going to get a good reading, but I've got a 1/2 inch breaker bar with a 3/8 reducer to a 1/4 inch reducer to an Allen wrench. And there's no way I'm going to get an accurate reading, but just for giggles, let's see what it does. I tried my 1/4 inch breaker bar and it exceeded 60 inch-pounds. Okay, so for whatever that monstrosity of a torque wrench setup that I had going on was worth, I think it measured about 7 foot-pounds, but it's not going to be very accurate because, again, I'm checking removal when it breaks, and I went from a 1/2 inch down to a 3/8 down to a 1/4 down to a socket to an Allen, so I wouldn't say that it's very valid, but it'll get me in the ballpark if I need it. I've already loosened them all up, and they all read about the same thing, roughly between 5 and 7 foot-pounds, which is going to be somewhere between 60 and 84 inch-pounds. I'm guessing that's what it's going to be measured in. This is spring-loaded. It's got outwards tension, so I'm just going to hold down a little bit. Okay. Plate comes off. Looks like, yeah, it is chamfered on this side, which is the outside edge, and it's flat on this side. It has an arrow pointing up, and just for giggles, I'm going to start it at the 12 o'clock position to see if it matters. So let's pull off the plate first. Well, how about that? Yep, they are all stuck together. Yep, these should be coming apart in pieces. Each one of these should have its own set, and I'll show you here in just a second, but yeah, this thing's just frozen up. It's rusted, and anyway, alright, well, good diagnosis anyway. Let's see if I can get all this off of here. Yep, so the whole clutch pack came off, and I think that was 12 o'clock position right there. I have to look back at the video just to make sure. And then that's the position it came off. They appear to all be the same diameter. I'm used to like the starter being a little bit different diameter than the rest. So I'm going to leave this in place intact just so I can see to put it back together. EBC brakes? I don't know. It's a DRC 107. There's my clutch discs. I think that's actually called the clutch disc, and that's the friction disc. Anyway, they all appear to be about the same size, and they're not all stuck together. Looks like it came with heavy-duty clutch spring set. Alright, so let's just check the springs real quick, and yeah, they are the same size. So we'll go ahead and change the springs out. Why? Because it came with new ones and appears to be a reputable company. So we'll put all these aside. The clutch discs, we're going to leave those in place. So something about clutches, when you're replacing them, when it's a wet clutch design, like a regular automatic transmission, things like that, they always want you to soak these first. The friction side, not necessarily the metal side, but the friction side, they want you to soak these in whatever transmission fluid you plan on using. Yeah, these are all identical. They're no, when I mean thicker, there's usually one that's like a little bit taller than the rest. You know, a little bit thicker this way, and it'll be just one of them. And it usually, I think, is the first one in, but I always have to look and compare. So anyway, they want you to soak these. So it came with this fancy tray. Let's just put a little bit of the oil in it. So this bike calls for this 15W50 4T motor oil, top speed. So we want just enough oil to coat these. We're just trying to get oil on them before we start assembling them. Let those sit. Just making sure they get a good coat of oil. Let them sit for a little bit, and then we're going to stack them just like this old stack was. So it looks like it would be friction ring, then metal plate, then friction ring, and basically just alternate all the way out so you end up with a friction ring on the outside. So while that's soaking, I'm going to try to do some research and see if I can find the torque specs for this. So stay tuned. Clutch bolts are M6s, and they should be set to 9 foot-pounds. And the hexagon bolt for the inner clutch hub needs Loctite and needs to be torqued to 44 foot-pounds. So 9 foot-pounds and 44 foot-pounds. Loctite on the bolt that basically fell out in my hand. So let's go ahead and get this stacked together. Okay, let's pull the clutch pack. I don't know if that's called the primary. Anyway, that's off the bike. Let's start off with friction ring, plate, friction ring. I'm going to have to keep an eye on these plates. I need all the teeth to line up. I'm going to try to eyeball this, all those metal plates. I need all of those to line up. Now, I might have to line them up this way. Sometimes they drop in pretty easy and sometimes they don't. So this is not cooperating. Let's do it this way. Alright, let's put this in place. So we got the arrow on this one. Let's make that point to the 12 o'clock position, just like that. And then the arrow on this one is right there. So we want that hole to line up there. Just like that. Okay, brand new springs. Make sure the chamfer side is up. We'll start these by hand, and we have to draw them down. So I'm going to use the drill driver just to make it a little bit quicker, and I'll have to finish it with a torque wrench. But since it's all on springs, it's going to take a little bit of back and forth to get this lined up. Kind of wish this came with new bolts. Somebody else was already in here and kind of messed up the heads a little bit. put this back in the vise carefully with a rag and see if I can get these torqued up to 9 foot-pounds each in a star pattern. So hang tight. Okay, a little bit stubborn, but I got it. That thread bolt head there was just a little bit messed up. I ended up having to use a T27 Torx to get in there and grab it. You can get one in there if you really try, and that seemed to get me to tighten up to my 9 foot-pounds. Otherwise, everything else is in pretty good shape. Let's go ahead and get it back on the bike. Yeah, let's try a different angle this time. Clean that out. Clean my threads on this bolt, because we're going to be using Loctite on there. I want it to be able to bind. We have a brand new gasket. Before I pull this off, let me make sure it matches. And that looks pretty close. Part number P4002704-75001. Came with the gasket, the water pump gasket, the water pump seal, and what appears to be 2 bearings for the water pump. Get this off of here. Here. My gasket. That's the gear that fell out. It's back in line. Just look for anything obvious. Just trial and error a couple times until we get everything to line up. Trying to seat the clutch pack back in. Welcome back, friends. Camera died on me. Anyway, I had to wiggle this around quite a bit to get it seated in there. Anyway, that's seated in. Kind of curious if building this clutch pack on the bike might have been a little bit easier. Yeah. So we've got that bolt I was talking about. It's 15 millimeter. Did say to use Loctite. Yeah, it's supposed to be 44 foot-pounds, and like I said, I took it off with my fingers. So it definitely wasn't right. So I'm going to have to stop this from spinning. I've already got the torque wrench set to 44. I'm going to try to do this by putting a There we go. 44 foot-pounds. Get the gasket set in place. And let's see what it takes to change out that water pump. It appears I need to do that on the bike, or I need to do it while this cover's off because I'm not sure how to get that bearing out. It might just pull out, and it might need to punch out from this side. So let me get the antifreeze out of this thing and drain it into a bucket. And I anticipate it's going to leak. Okay, let's pull this water pump off. So all three of those are the same size. Yeah, I'm fairly confident somebody else was in here because it looks like the original gasket was like a silicone, a blue silicone, and somebody else has put one of these aftermarket kits like I've got. And they didn't do a bad job. So that one head of that one screw. So if I had to guess, let's say we're going to pull out that snap ring, pull out the impeller. I'm kind of curious if it drives out of there. I keep getting smaller and smaller hammers. It's almost out. Let me get a punch and finish that up. There we go. And it looks like there's a seal back here and a bearing on that side. So I tell you what, I'm going to finish taking this off because it'll be easier to work on the bench. Okay, let's finish pushing that out. There's my bearing. I'm fairly confident that I almost got that all the way out. Thought that bearing sat further up on here. It's almost out. The only reason I'm hammering on the bearing is because I know I'm changing it. Okay. So the new bearing goes first. I found a 9mm deep well socket. Seems to fit right on there. Just bringing it down to where the old mark was. Okay, scratch that. I had to use a 10mm socket impact so that it had softer edges, and that drove it all the way down. And it's kind of looking like there's a bearing in right there, and then a seal on the outside. It's coming out? Yep, it's coming out. And seal right there. Excuse me, bearing right there. Got the seal out. The spring is on the top side. I'm not sure that's accurate though. I would think that's the water side. I would think it should be the other direction. Okay, bearings out. There's a stop at the bottom here that keeps you from driving it too far in. Let's get a socket or a, see if I have a bearing punch that's that small. Just gently tapping on it. The trick here is you're wanting to hit on this outside race, but it also has to be small enough to fit. That's pretty close. That'll get you started. That is a 9/16. I think it's going to be too big. Yeah, that's too big. It's fighting me. That one is really close. Okay, the bearing's all the way seated at the bottom here. I can see it bottomed out. I was just taking the socket and I was trying to aim where I was hitting around the outside edge as I'm moving this around. So try to find that was a 1/2 inch deep well socket. I wonder if an impact might have been a little bit tighter because they're usually a little wider. Yeah, that's the funny part. I would think you'd want to drive the seal from this direction. Want to drive the seal down from this direction since it bottoms out that way, and you normally wouldn't hammer on the spring side. I think that seal is supposed to go the other direction. The other part was it wasn't leaking the way it was on there, but to drive that seal in you don't normally drive on the spring side. Normally you drive on the other side. So that's what we're going to do. There we go. Looks about right. Okay, seems to be bottomed out okay. I heard the tone of the hammering of the bearing change when it bottomed out. So, it spins freely. Let's go ahead and get the impeller back on while it's easier to work on. So this has a keyway on it. Let's match up the keyway. Push it down far enough that you can see the snap ring groove. A little bit more. Okay. So when the snap ring goes flying across the shop and you have to go digging for it, it makes for a rough day, and it's hard to keep the cursing down. And I'd almost given up hope. And of course it was the last place I looked. And why is that? Because after that you stop looking. This gasket right here. And that gasket. There is a gear mating surface that's going to have to line up with this, so we are going to have to watch what position that's in and then turn that to whatever position that might be, because it'll stop it from going onto the bike all the way. Okay, that water pump I was just talking about, that groove needs to line up with that groove. So if we make that point, let's see, straight up and down in that position. So let's turn this one about straight up and down. So if it's on there like that, about like that. Oh, it's still not straight up and down. A little bit more. That looks pretty close. If it doesn't line up, just turning this will allow that gear to turn to line it up. So I just want it to be fairly close before we start though. And I'm really hoping that I got that Kickstarter right. It's kind of funny, they give me larger holes for the alignment pins, and on this one the alignment pins aren't larger holes like that. Alright, that spring appears to seat on there. It has like a collar. And let's see how close we can get. Tell you what I've noticed is it doesn't want to go on straight, but if you wiggle it back and forth, it likes to fall on there pretty easy. use a hammer. Use the palm of your hand. Look like the longest of the screws. Yep, the longest of the screws goes right there. All the rest of them were about the same length. Or I shouldn't say about, they were the same length. I'm just going to snug them down. Okay, these are 6 foot-pounds. I don't want to forget that one behind the peg. Stripped. This one, I think, is a lost cause. Pretty sure that one's stripped out. Alright, y'all hang tight. I'm gonna have to find a bolt for this thing. Alright, y'all, I found a longer bolt. Same size, same thread pitch, just longer. I'm noticing I've got threads coming out, so I'm hoping that it's long enough to grab some threads inside there. It's going to take me a while of feeding it in and back out, so bear with me. Okay, I'm meeting pretty good resistance right there, and that's about 10 threads. How does that compare? Yep. So I need to take a little bit of this off of here. Probably about half that distance. And then probably throw a washer on here. So maybe I'll only cut off about right there. And then throw a washer on it. And that should give us enough threads to seat it up. Cut the bolt down, cut it a little bit, and use the hacksaw, and then use on the end of on a bench grinder, just basically rounded the edges off a little bit. Let's put a little bit of Loctite on it. Attempt to give this thing a fighting chance. it. I'm pushing on the clamp to see if it's slipping. That tells me if it's tight enough or not. Looks like this uses a O-ring as its seal. So let's get the bike filled up with oil up to here. We'll get the Kickstarter put back on, get our brake pedal put back on. Oops, I almost forgot. Don't want to lose, don't want to not have that in. The brake pedal put back on. Take that nut off. I'm going to try to clean this out and add a little bit new fresh grease in there. Okay. Try to get the spring on before we get too far. Now my hands are all covered in grease. Right, let's see, I want that to go up into the master cylinder. Feels about right. 1/2-inch wrench. Tighten that back up. I don't see any reason why it should have been loose, even though it was. Yep. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not locking the bike or the brake pedal. Get that tightened on down. That's working. That works. Let's go ahead and get the oil in it. That took almost the whole bottle before it came up on there, and this appears to be a 1-liter bottle. So now I'm up in the window, near the top of the window. Alright, so when it's folded up, it should be like that. When you go to kickstart, you should be able to put it maybe a little bit back. About like that. Okay. I may put Loctite on that. I'd like to verify that everything works like it's supposed to before I get, well, I was going to say too carried away, but I've already assembled everything. Let's get this antifreeze topped off. I already put some in before I grabbed the camera. It's probably going to go down as it starts up and runs. That's it for tonight. I'm going to let it sit overnight, check it in the morning, Make sure I don't have any fresh oil leaks or anything like that. See if it fires up, see how the clutch behaves, and fingers crossed, hopefully we did everything right. I'll see you guys in the morning, and we'll take it for a little ride. I don't want to go too fast. I don't want to hurt myself. I'm kind of old. So, y'all have a good night. I think we got it fixed. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. That's the clutch and water pump on a KTM 65. Applies to a lot of other dirt bikes as well. So, if you enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up and a like. Helps the channel tremendously. So, the kind of content you guys are after.